At the start of its history, Vigevano is a water town. In fact, it is close to the banks of the river Ticino that from the start of the 10th century saw the first organized settlement spring up. Place of Longobarд origin, Vigevano soon developed around a promontory raised above the Ticino Valley. The Blue River runs to the doors of the city, and for years Vigevano has extracted its wealth from the Grand River. Its waters have been further used by means of a dense network of canals for the irrigation of the countryside. A grandiose and expert water system was produced by the nobility of Milan, the Visconti family, but above all by the Sforza family, with contributions by Leonardo da Vinci. From up on high they appear, like paintings from a great abstract artist, the huge mirrors of the rice fields, the arabesque order of the canals, dikes, excavations, which spread out like veins and arteries. It is these that have rendered the countryside around Vigevano so fertile. Beside the wide roads, open to the wind and sun, the wheat, corn and rice fields are reminiscent of a time when Vigevano and Lomellina were the granaries of the Dukedom of Milan. Even today, some mills take advantage of the ancient canalization to grind the grain as in the past. The same water allows the cultivation and generous rice harvest in all the surrounding countryside. There are those who describe it as a stage the shape of a piazza. Alternatively, there are those who consider it as a regal salon. What is certain is that Piazza De Cali is one of the most fascinating piazzas in Italy, a theatrical design which expresses splendor and harmony. The Grand Maestro Arturo Toscanini, even though ill, asked to be carried to Vigevano to sit at the tables in the bars because he considered Piazza De Cali as a musical symphony, an orchestral composition on 4 sides similar to the 4 movements of symphonies. Even today, the piazza represents the ancient and modern heart of the town. Piazza De Cali is considered to be the prototype of the Renaissance piazza taken from the ancient classics, or rather from the concept of Forum Romano proposed by Vitruvio and Leon Battista Alberti. The story begins with Ludovico il Moro, Lord of Milan, who thought of it as a courtyard of honor, anteroom for the entrance to the imposing castle of the Visconti and Sforza families. Construction of this Italian architectural jewel started in 1492 and concluded 2 years later. The visit of the potent and feared King of France, Charles VIII, in October 1494 coincided with its official inauguration. Piazza De Cali is presented as a rectangle, 134 meters in length and 48 in width, with buildings on 3 sides. The 4th is occupied by the cathedral. In the time of Ludovico il Moro, the piazza had an appearance different to the present. Between the arcades open triumphal arches from which the town streets issued, and to access the castle there was a long stone ramp, passable by horses and carriages, where today there is the stairway erected to the height of the tower. The present architectural form was designed by Bishop architect Juan Caramuel Lobkowitz, who in 1680 closed the 4th side with the concave Baroque facade of the cathedral, eliminating the access ramp to the castle and closing the triumphal arches, completing the arcades. In carrying out this transformation work, Caramuel cancelled the idea of the piazza as a court of the Dominus to transform it into a splendid church plaza for the Temple of God. The inside of the cathedral, a Latin cross, has kept its Renaissance characteristics. For those who enter the cathedral at a glance, the huge central nave is apparent, whose decorations by Gonin represent at the center of the vault St. Ambrose, acclaimed bishop, his episcopal consecration, and the act of refusing entry into the temple of Emperor King Theodosio. From the entrance of the capitulary sacristy, one can access the Duomo Museum. For the most part, the treasure consists of donations by Francesco Sforza II and conserves precious hymn books, missals, illuminated manuscripts from the end of the 15th century, pastoral staffs, and a most precious relic in carved silver by the great goldsmith Benvenuto Cellini. There is, moreover, one of the most significant Italian collections of Flemish tapestries, representing the parables of the prodigal son, the stories of Esther and Joseph, and the achievements of Alexander the Great. With the elimination of the castle access ramp, the piazza lost its reference to secular power and assumed the name Piazza del Duomo, Piazza of the Cathedral, kept since the Napoleonic era. On three sides, it is surrounded by arcades and arches, supported by 84 columns with chapters in styles that are each different from the other. Above every column, there is a medallion which portrays characters from the Roman and Renaissance periods, among which there is the creator Ludovico il Moro and his consort Beatrice d'Este. Next to these portrayals are designs of heraldic deeds accompanied by mottos and proverbs. Piazza De Cali is presented as a huge urban room, with its walls all painted. The decorative frescoes simulate refined architecture of classical taste. An illusionist style of architecture which has been attributed to Bramante, the current appearance is the result of careful restoration, which has conserved the traces of the 15th century paint. The reconstruction work was carried out at the start of the 20th century. The paving of the piazza was produced in 1820 with black and white pebbles which come from the river Ticino. The diverse geometrical forms created with white pebbles attract one's attention. The sun's rays can be distinguished at the base of the cast iron street lamps, as well as the Star of David at the plaza in front of the cathedral. Looking up, one notices, among the many features, the shapes, each different from the next, of the brick chimney pots in full view. Decorating the roofs, they seem to rise up, almost as if to challenge the grand tower. Then, from the long guttering, original dripstones sprout out in the form of a dragon. Dominating the piazza, with its imposing and contemporary elegance, is the Tower of Bramante. The main entrance leading from the Piazza De Cali to the castle of the Visconti and Sforza families is today still found under the tower, which is accessed by the grand staircase. Under the arcades, the shops once occupied by merchants of silk and wool offer visitors relaxation and comfort and the chance of top-quality shopping. The Piazza De Cali, the tower and the castle, whose main buildings date back to the 15th century, represent a complex unique of its kind. Thanks to the genius of Bramante and Leonardo, to the work of the engineers and the ducal workers, Vigevano is considered by many experts to be the ideal city. The Sforza Castle is a little town within a town, and with its extensions, one of the biggest fortified complexes of Europe. it would be able to contain Buckingham Palace twice, St. Peter's Basilica 3 times, and the Cathedral of Milan 6 times. The Castle of Vigevano is not a single building, but rather an ensemble of constructions, which are interconnected thanks to daring architectural solutions which had never been tried before. The constructional anomaly is that it came to be built in the centre of the town, on a hill, not, as the rule was, straddling the city walls. Both for its dimensions and for the complexity of the installation, its construction is unique within the panorama of the buildings of the Visconti era and the Italian constructions of the late Middle Ages and Renaissance. One possible explanation is that from the start, the Castle of Vigevano was not thought of as a fortified complex, responding to defensive and military needs, but rather as a residence of prestige, of representation, as a favourite place for the amusement and delight of the Dukes of Milan. In this sense, the Castle of Vigevano represents an anticipation of the Renaissance palace, often evolving from a pre-existent castle, as in the cases of Urbino and Mantua. The first centre dates back to the age of the Longobards, while its transformation into a noble residence, a hotel of charm, is due to the Visconti and Sforza families, in particular to Ludovico il Moro. Artists such as Bramante and, it is thought, Leonardo surely contributed to its production. With the end of the Sforza dynasty in 1535, the castle passed to the Spanish and began a slow decline. Towards the middle of the 19th century, it was put to use as a barracks for the Sardinian army and then for the Royal Italian Army. It remained a military base until 1968. Since 1978, when it became part of the government estate, it has been the subject of recovery and restoration work that is still underway. The Maschio, Don John, started by Luchino Visconti, housed the ducal apartments, banqueting rooms, as well as large areas for ball games and musical and theatrical entertainment. In the rear part of the Maschio, Bramante created a secluded residential wing called Loggia delle Damme, the ladies' balcony, facing a hanging garden. This wing was reserved for Duchess Beatrice d'Este. On the roof garden, precious essences and aromatic plants were cultivated. The Falconiera, falconry, is an elegant aerial lodge which rests upon 48 columns, so called because falcons were launched from there on hunting days. The origin of such an elegant meeting hall connected to the Maschio is attributed to the patronage of Donna Bramante. From the lodge, one descended through a suggestive covered gradient, still in existence, towards the church of San Pietro Martire, St. Peter Martyr, which conserves traces of a walled door through which the ducal court passed to go to prayer. Inside the castle, the 3 stables could accommodate over 400 horses. The stable, named Ludovico because it was built in 1494 by Ludovico il Moro, is 94 meters long and 12 wide. According to several experts, it would have served as inspiration for the model stable designed by Leonardo da Vinci in Code B of Paris and in the Trivolziano Code. More likely, it was the work of Lombardy workers, certainly influenced by the style of Brunelleschi which Leonardo spread around Lombardy. Ludovico il Moro decorated the outside of all 3 stables with typically Bramantesque geometric designs and false architecture. Sadly, today little is visible. The Strada Coperta, covered road, is a construction unique to all European castle architecture. It represents one of the most formidable works of medieval urban and military engineering. Constructed in the 14th century by Luchino Visconti, it is 161 metres long and 7.3 metres wide, defined by castellated walls and placed 15 metres above the street level of the town. Through this entirely covered aerial passage, the Dukes of Milan could enter and leave without being seen. At the town gate in the middle of the Ticino Park, the Sforzesca Villa is the green lungs of Vigevano, a historical open-air eco-museum. The village owes its name to Ludovico Maria Sforza, who in 1486 transformed this ducal possession from vile serf into a very rich land, as can be read on the inscription stone in Latin couplets dictated by the humanitarian and classical scholar Ermo Lau Barbaro and walled in by the colombarone corner facade. The colombarone is the heart of the Sforzesca. It is made of a four-sided construction, which reminds one of the typical arrangement of castles, with four buildings around a central, almost square courtyard. The four angular towers, or columbae, dovecotes, were the lodgings for the drivers and the court in transit when they left the castle for hunting expeditions in the Ticino woods. Inside were to be found the workers' houses, the stores, the stables, livestock breeding, and also an inn. The Sforzesca was thought of from the start as a well-structured village, as an extended possession, as an agricultural company whose nature and whose purpose was production, not the delight and lazing of princes. It came to be considered as the absolutely prime example of an agricultural complex and closed court, archetypical of the companies which developed in modern ages. All around, there still extends today an expanse of cultivated land where, as a result of wise interconnection, the springs and irrigation canals give life to the phenomenon of the water meadows, which ensure cut grass and therefore fodder even during the winter months. The experimentation and the new management methods and techniques carried out in the field at the Sforzesca had in Leonardo da Vinci an attentive and participating observer, and perhaps also a provider of suggestions, as shown in the frequent quotations of Vigevano which appear in manuscript H, conserved in Paris by the French Institute. They are notes and designs ranging from hydraulic assemblies to the reclamation of agricultural land, from agronomic observations to the construction of a wooded pavilion. The majority are dated February-March 1494 from Vigevano, and actually from the Sforzesca. At the Sforzesca, next to the former farmers' houses and overlooking the evocative Via dei Fiori, Flower Street, we find the 19th century complex of the patronal villa and private residence Villa Saporiti. The construction is composed of four courtyards, two used for the residence and two for agricultural activities. Inside the building are kept commemorative relics of the Battle of the Sforzesca of the 21st of March 1849, when Carlo Alberto installed his general headquarters there. Beside the villa is found the church of San Antonio, St. Antony, with a neoclassical facade, large dome and Baroque bell tower. A magnificent park is also attached to the villa, rich with local flowers, centuries-old trees and picturesque corners, with a large mirror of water drawn from the mill's irrigation ditch. Vigevano is not just Piazza De Cali, the historical centre, and the Sforza Castle. Modern Vigevano has a major attraction in the Cagnoni Civic Theatre, which offers prose, opera and dance performances from October to June. At the entrance to the theatre, a statue recalls the great actress Eleonora Duse, to whom Vigevano gave birth. Whereas in the summer months, the grand courtyard of the castle is transformed into an open-air stage, a space equipped for the young and not so young with major concerts and film premieres. Moreover, from March to December, on the last Sunday of the month, the exhibition Vigevano è, Vigevano is, transforms the historic centre and adjacent streets into a huge pedestrian precinct with events, entertainment and cultural activities, where it is possible to buy organic and local products. Every year, the council promotes the famous Città di Vigevano National Literary Prize, named after the author Lucio Mastronardi, a symbol of the town who, through his 3 novels, knew how to make us relive the vices and virtues of the ducal town during the economic boom years. Again in autumn, a literary exhibition with top names from Italian fiction and non-fiction are guests in the Cavallerizza, Riders' Spaces. Meanwhile, in the ducal stables, there is space for a renowned art exhibition with works by artists and themed collections. In October, the Palio delle Contrade caught a prize with representations and reenactments of historical events and Renaissance culture is the other not to be missed occasion. Other events, several of which are connected to the theme of fashion and footwear, further enrich the panorama of exhibitive proposals. Having a permanent location above the stables are the Museo Internazionale della Calzatura, International Museum of Footwear, the first and unique public institution in Italy dedicated to the history and evolution of the shoe as an item of clothing and as object of design and style, and the Civic Art Gallery, with great Italian and European works of the 19th century on display. The neoclassical rooms of Palazzo Roncalli, dating back to the mid-19th century, house the Museo della Vita Quotidiana, Museum of Daily Life, which includes an interesting section dedicated to the Great War. In addition, every year a national riding competition is held in the prized setting of the castle courtyard. An ever more popular sporting event, which occurs on the last Sunday of March, is the Scarpa d'Oro Half Marathon, Golden Shoe Half Marathon, combined with the Family Run. For lovers of outdoor sports, the golf club with an 18-hole course almost entirely inside the Ticino Park represents an attraction and a point of reference on the national golfing circuit. History, arts, culture, events and sport. Vigevano, a town which has time for you.